The sickening thud of Emily's body hitting the brick walkway still echoes in my mind. I was halfway out of my truck, grocery bags in one hand, when I saw her, my wife, 7 months pregnant, crumple like a broken doll at the bottom of our porch stairs. Karen Whitmore stood at the top, her hand frozen midair from the shove she had just delivered, her perfectly pressed blazer unmoving despite the icy wind swirling through Willow Creek Estates. The string of colorful Christmas lights Emily had been hanging wrapped helplessly around her legs, and blood trickled from her temple. I dropped everything and sprinted toward her, but time felt molasses thick, stretching each second into unbearable eternity. Somewhere in the background I could hear Karen's shrill voice barking about HOA violations, utterly oblivious to the life she had just endangered. She had no idea yet what storm was about to roll into Willow Creek, a storm in the form of 5 full military convoys and the personal wrath of General Robert Hayes himself. But before we dive into the chaos that unfolded that cold afternoon, make sure to hit the like button to help support our growing community. We share wild true stories about HOAs and neighborhood drama every single day, and your support keeps us going strong. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new saga, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. We absolutely love hearing about all the different places our viewers call home. My name is Captain Alex Donovan, United States Army Logistics Corps, and until yesterday I thought the worst thing that could happen during my leave was running out of hot chocolate during a snowstorm. Emily and I had just moved into Willow Creek Estates 2 months ago, drawn by its charming brick homes, old-growth trees, and promises of a quiet, safe community. We were finally planting roots after years of bouncing between military bases, sublets, and tiny apartments. Willow Creek seemed perfect for our growing family, close enough to Fort Buchanan for my duty calls, yet far enough to feel like we had truly arrived somewhere we could stay. The first month was fine. We got a few curious glances from neighbors, but mostly polite hellos. Then came the letters. At first they seemed almost laughable. A stern warning about the color of our mailbox, approved HOA colors only, dark forest green or slate gray, a notice that our garden gnome, a gift from Emily's late grandfather, was unauthorized outdoor decor, and most ridiculously a citation for excessive seasonal enthusiasm, because Emily put a pumpkin on the porch before October 15th. We shrugged it off. We were used to bureaucracy. Emily, a military family counselor with a mind sharper than most generals I know, joked that HOA red tape had nothing on Pentagon paperwork. But then came Karen Whitmore. Karen, who had somehow served as Willow Creek Estates HOA president for 8 consecutive terms without opposition. Karen, whose husband was a regional bank executive and whose real power lay not in her clipboard, but in whispered threats about mortgage rates and property values. Karen, who treated every square inch of the neighborhood like her personal fiefdom. By late November, the letters had turned into confrontations. Emily called me one afternoon almost in tears because Karen had stood on our porch scolding her for unapproved garden edging. The edging in question? 3 stones Emily had placed along a flower bed. Harmless, beautiful even, but apparently treasonous under Karen's iron rule. We tried to keep peace. We really did. But then Christmas approached. Emily, more excited for the holidays than I had seen her in years, wanted to put up our lights early. She reasoned that with the baby coming soon and me being called back to duty over Christmas week, it made sense to celebrate while we could. She picked out soft, colorful lights, the kind that twinkle just a little like tiny winks in the winter darkness. We both knew technically that the HOA had a rule about decorations: no lights before December 1st, and they had to be muted gold and silver tones. But really, who enforces that over a couple of days? It's Christmas. Even Karen couldn't be that heartless. We were wrong. So wrong. The day it happened started like any other. I just returned from a supply run, groceries, salt for the driveway, a few final presents for Emily tucked secretly into the trunk. As I turned onto our street, I saw her, standing precariously on a small ladder, laughing to herself as she untangled the string of lights and tried to hook them over the porch rail. She was wearing my oversized army sweatshirt, her baby bump prominent beneath it, and I swear I'd never seen anything more beautiful. Then Karen appeared. Clipboard in hand, stormcloud scowl locked and loaded. I pulled into the driveway, already moving to get out, but before I could reach them it happened. Karen stepped forward. She said something, I couldn't hear what, and then without hesitation shoved Emily squarely in the chest. The world froze. Emily's hands flew instinctively to her belly. Her feet tangled in the lights. She toppled backwards down the stairs, landing hard with a dull, awful crack against the walkway. The grocery bags slipped from my fingers. Eggs smashed against the concrete. My keys clattered somewhere at my feet. But all I could see was Emily, curled up, clutching her stomach, blood seeping from her hairline. Karen, meanwhile, adjusted her scarf and began scribbling something furiously onto her clipboard. I sprinted. "Emily, stay still, honey. Don't move," I barked, the command tone snapping into place automatically after years of battlefield emergencies. I dropped to my knees beside her, scanning, airways clear, breathing rapid, a shallow cut on the head, but God, what about internal injuries? "The baby?" She moaned softly, squeezing my hand, her wedding ring digging into my palm. "My back," she whispered. "Alex, the baby? You're okay. You're okay. I've got you," I said, even as my heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it might break. "Phone. Ambulance. Fast." I called 911, rattling off our address, the situation, demanding an ambulance with obstetric capabilities, while keeping my other hand pressed tightly against Emily's shoulder to ground me. As I hung up, I became aware of Karen's voice barking behind me. "You're making a scene," she snapped. "You're disturbing the peace. And your wife damaged HOA property." I turned, and for the first time in my life truly understood the phrase "seeing red." She was pointing, actually pointing, at a tiny decorative planter that had tipped over when Emily fell. A plastic Christmas poinsettia lay half-crushed beside it. "You need to remove these decorations immediately," Karen said. "You're violating Section 8, Paragraph 3 of the Community Standards Manual, and I will be fining you $500. I rose slowly to my full height, 6'3" of pure, barely contained rage, and took a step toward her. "You assaulted my wife," I said low and calm. "She's pregnant. The ambulance will be here in minutes. And so will the police. Our security cameras caught everything." Karen's eyes flickered for the first time. She glanced at the tiny doorbell camera mounted beside our front door, a camera that streamed everything directly to cloud storage. But she recovered quickly. "I didn't touch her," she said, voice syrup sweet but edges hard. "Even if I did, it was accidental. You people are blowing this way out of proportion." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her overpowering floral perfume. "My husband controls half the mortgages in this county," she hissed. "One call and your interest rate doubles overnight. Think about that before you make a scene over a few stupid lights." I didn't blink. I didn't budge. Instead, I pulled out my phone again. And this time I scrolled to a very different number. One reserved only for true emergencies. General Robert Hayes, otherwise known in certain circles as Bulldog. And Karen Whitmore was about to learn exactly why. Karen's smug smile faltered as I raised the phone to my ear. She was used to winning, used to people backing down at the first hint of trouble. Not today. Not with my wife lying injured on the frozen bricks and our unborn daughter's life hanging in the balance. "General Hayes, sir," I said crisply as he answered. "This is Captain Alex Donovan. I need immediate assistance at 918 Willow Creek Lane. My pregnant wife's been assaulted. Civilian authorities are en route, but her condition's unknown, sir. I could use some backup." There was a pause, barely a heartbeat, then the gruff, familiar voice of the man known as Bulldog rumbled through the line. "On it, Donovan. Sit tight." I slipped the phone back into my pocket and turned to Emily, brushing hair from her pale forehead. Her lips trembled from the cold or the pain, maybe both. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Neighbors. One by one, faces appeared behind curtains and blinds. Some stepped cautiously onto their porches, clutching mugs of coffee, phones raised to record the chaos. Yet not a single one stepped forward to help. Years of living under Karen's iron rule had trained them well. Stay silent. Stay invisible. Karen's voice pierced the icy air again. "You're making a federal case over a stumble," she sneered. "I'm within my rights to issue citations. You're lucky I'm not suing you for emotional distress." At that moment, a low rumble vibrated through the ground beneath our feet. Karen froze mid-rant, her head tilting like a confused bird. The neighbors stiffened. The phones lowered. Something was coming. I knew that sound intimately, the synchronized growl of multiple military engines. The rumble grew louder. Closer. Karen turned in a slow, confused circle, scanning the empty street. And then, as if summoned by the sheer force of justice itself, the first convoy appeared. An olive-drab Humvee rounded the corner, headlights slicing through the gray December gloom. It was followed by another. And another. Behind them, larger transport trucks, their heavy tires chewing up the suburban blacktop. A military ambulance. More Humvees. The convoy stretched farther than I could see, a massive unstoppable river of green and steel flowing directly into Willow Creek Estates. Karen's mouth fell open. The clipboard slipped from her hand, landing unnoticed at her feet. I stood slowly, letting the image of reinforcements burn itself into every neighbor's memory. Karen stumbled backward, colliding with the tipped-over planter she'd been so worried about moments ago. "I warned you," I said softly. The lead Humvee screeched to a halt in front of our house. The passenger door flew open and out stepped General Robert Hayes, 6'4" of pure, controlled fury in a regulation winter jacket, with the U.S. Army insignia flashing on his sleeve like a badge of honor. He surveyed the scene with a hawk's gaze, Emily bleeding on the ground, me shielding her, Karen Whitmore clutching her pearls. The general's face darkened. "Captain Donovan, report?" he barked, his voice slicing through the winter air sharper than any December wind. "Pregnant wife assaulted by civilian," I replied, nodding at Karen. "Potential head trauma. Awaiting civilian ambulance. Scene secured." Hayes gave one short, curt nod. He didn't waste time arguing or demanding explanations. He trusted his people. Turning to his convoy, he snapped an order. "Medical team, move." 3 military medics leapt from the ambulance and jogged toward us, medical packs swinging from their shoulders. Karen, regaining some of her composure, shoved forward, her voice climbing into hysterical territory. "You can't be here. This is private property. You're trespassing. I'm the HOA president, and I demand you leave immediately." Hayes turned his full attention to her, pinning her in place with a look so cold, it could have frozen Lake Erie solid. "And I'm General Robert Hayes, United States Army," he said flatly. "Stand down, ma'am." Karen puffed herself up, her face flushing a deep, angry maroon. "My husband," she began, voice shaking. "My husband is Senior VP at Regional Trust Bank. You'll regret this. You'll regret interfering with this community's lawful standards." Hayes didn't blink. Instead, he beckoned to one of his aides, a young lieutenant who hurried over with a tablet in hand. "Security footage?" Hayes asked. "Yes, sir," the lieutenant replied, tapping a few buttons. On the screen, plain as day, was Karen, shoving Emily down the stairs. No debate. No gray areas. No possible way to spin it. Karen took a shaky step back, her high heels sliding slightly on the icy walkway. "You're lying. That's fake. That's, she stammered, voice cracking. The general didn't engage. He simply turned to me. "Captain, stay with your wife. We'll secure the scene until local law enforcement arrives." He turned back to Karen with slow, terrifying precision. "And ma'am, for your sake, I suggest you prepare for a conversation with the county sheriff's office. Assaulting a pregnant woman carries very serious penalties." Karen's mouth worked soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. Behind her, more neighbors gathered, emboldened by the arrival of actual authority. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Phones filmed openly now, lenses trained squarely on Karen's unraveling. The civilian ambulance screeched into the neighborhood, paramedics rushing out. They quickly deferred to the military medics, who briefed them calmly, professionally. Emily was lifted onto a stretcher, her hand never once letting go of mine. She looked up at me, tears glistening in her lashes. "Our lights," she whispered, her voice faint. "They were supposed to be happy. Not this." I bent low, pressing my forehead gently against hers. "They will be," I promised. "I swear to you, Em." As they wheeled her toward the ambulance, Karen screeched one last desperate attempt at authority. "You're all going to regret this. I'll have you sued for military intimidation. Abuse of power. You're ruining my Christmas." Hayes actually laughed. A short, humorless bark that silenced the entire cul-de-sac. "Ma'am," he said dryly, "I think you ruined it all by yourself." He turned to his men, barked another command, and the convoy began repositioning to create a clear path for the ambulance. I climbed into the vehicle beside Emily, squeezing her hand tightly. Through the rear window, as the ambulance pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of Karen, standing alone in the street, framed by the massive bulk of military trucks and a growing crowd of angry, filming neighbors. And I knew she could threaten mortgages, scream about property values, or rant about HOA policies all she wanted. None of it would save her now. The tide had turned. And Karen Whitmore was about to learn, painfully, that no one, not even a self-appointed queen of a neighborhood, is above consequences. The ride to Mercy General Hospital felt endless. Emily clutched my hand so tightly that my fingers tingled, but I didn't dare let go. Every bump in the road, every jostle of the stretcher sent a spike of fear through me. She was so still, so quiet. Too quiet. The paramedic across from us, a sturdy woman named Brenda, met my eyes over Emily's head and gave a small nod, professional but grim. She didn't need to say it out loud, they were worried too. At the hospital they rushed her into triage. I wasn't allowed in immediately, and standing there helpless, watching the doors swing shut behind her, was a different kind of torture. I was trained to fix things, to act, to command, to control chaos. But now I could only wait. The minutes dragged. I paced the sterile hallway like a caged animal, boots scuffing the linoleum. Every time a nurse or doctor appeared, I snapped my head up, heart hammering, only to be waved off with a "we'll let you know as soon as we can." I pulled out my phone and checked the security camera feed again. The footage was crystal clear. Karen's shove, Emily's fall, the horrified looks on our neighbors' faces. No question of what happened. No way to spin it. No way for Karen to slither out this time. Not that she wasn't going to try. My phone buzzed, a text from General Hayes. Sheriff's deputies on site. Karen Whitmore detained pending assault investigation. Stay focused on your wife. We'll handle the rest. I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. For the first time since the fall, I felt the tiniest sliver of hope. Justice wasn't just possible, it was already in motion. Another 20 agonizing minutes passed before a doctor finally emerged, still pulling off a pair of latex gloves. Middle-aged, graying at the temples, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Captain Donovan?" he asked, voice firm but kind. "Yes. How is she? How's the baby?" He gave a small smile, professional, not too encouraging but not grave either. "Your wife's stable. Minor concussion, some bruising on her back and hips, but no signs of internal bleeding. The baby's heartbeat is strong. We're keeping her overnight for observation just to be safe, but so far, everything looks good." My knees almost buckled with relief. "Thank you," I managed, the words thick in my throat. "You can see her now," he said, patting my shoulder once, like he knew how close I was to falling apart. Emily was in a small private room, hooked up to monitors that beeped reassuringly with every strong heartbeat from our daughter. She was pale, but when she smiled it was still Emily. "I told you," she said hoarsely. "Tough as nails." I crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt beside her bed, pressing her hand to my lips. "I thought I lost you," I whispered. "You're not getting rid of me that easily," she teased weakly. We sat like that for a while, holding hands, breathing together, the storm outside our little room temporarily forgotten. But only temporarily. Because Karen Whitmore wasn't done. Not by a long shot. While Emily dozed, exhausted from the stress and medication, I stepped out into the hall to take another call from General Hayes. "Update," he barked without preamble. "Emily and the baby are stable," I said. "No major injuries." "Good. You focus on her. But just so you know, Karen's pulling every string she's got. She's already contacted her husband's law firm, the HOA board, even a couple of local news stations." I closed my eyes for a second, grinding my molars together. "Of course she is. She's spinning it hard," Hayes continued. "Claiming you attacked her, that she was just defending herself from an aggressive homeowner refusing to comply with HOA regulations. Trying to paint herself as the victim." I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Is anyone buying it?" "Not likely. Too many witnesses. Plus that security footage you handed off? We've got it secured with timestamps, cloud backups, multiple copies." Hayes paused, his voice turning dark. "But you should know, she's also trying to get ahead of it legally. Filing a restraining order against you. Suing for harassment, emotional distress, you name it." I stared out the hospital window, watching snowflakes drift lazily past the streetlights. Karen wasn't just fighting for her reputation. She was fighting for her survival. And desperate people did desperate, stupid things. "I'm not backing down," I said quietly. "Didn't think you would," Hayes said with a chuckle. "Listen, county sheriff's bringing her in for formal questioning tomorrow. You'll probably need to give a statement too. I'll have a JAG officer assigned to you in case she tries to pull anything dirty." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Thank you, sir." "Donovan," Hayes said, softer now, almost fatherly. "You did the right thing. You protected your family. Remember that." I hung up and leaned my forehead against the cool glass, breathing deeply. Tomorrow would be a battle. But for tonight we were still standing. Still together. Still undefeated. When I returned to Emily's room she was awake again, blinking blearily. "Alex," she murmured. "What happens now?" I sat beside her, brushing her hair back gently. "Now," I said, "we heal." "And Karen?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. I smiled grimly. Karen's about to learn that picking a fight with a soldier's family isn't just a mistake. It's the biggest mistake of her life. Outside, the snow began falling harder, blanketing the town in white. A perfect, pure canvas, ready to be rewritten. The next morning, Willow Creek was buzzing like a hornet's nest kicked straight out of hell. The snowfall had covered the streets in a perfect blanket of white, but underneath, the tension simmered hotter than a July bonfire. News vans had parked sloppily along the curbs, their satellite dishes poking into the air like accusing fingers. Reporters prowled the sidewalks, clutching microphones and shouting questions at anyone who so much as cracked a front door open. Karen Whitmore's face was everywhere. On local news broadcasts, on Facebook groups, even on next-door forums that normally argued about potholes and missing cats. She was already spinning hard, of course, claiming she'd merely tried to stop a dangerous violation, that she'd been viciously attacked when confronting unapproved holiday decorations, that she was assaulted first by an aggressive, combative homeowner. It was pure fiction. But that didn't stop Karen from doing everything in her power to muddy the waters. She'd retained the biggest shark of a defense attorney in the county. She issued a formal HOA press release condemning violence against community standards enforcement officers. She even staged a fake injury, complete with a gauze-wrapped wrist and limp, when cameras showed up at her house. Karen wasn't just fighting for her reputation anymore. She was fighting for survival. And she was willing to burn the whole neighborhood down to save herself. Meanwhile, Emily was still at Mercy General, propped up in a hospital bed with her swollen belly monitored around the clock. Every few hours, a nurse would come in to check fetal heart tones, and each reassuring thump-thump-thump was a miracle I didn't deserve. She tried to pretend she wasn't bothered by the news circus outside. Tried to laugh it off when I showed her the more absurd headlines. Local HOA president assaulted over Christmas lights. Holiday horror. Neighborhood in chaos after decoration dispute. Military overreaction? Army convoys stormed suburban community. But I could see it eating at her. She blamed herself, even though she had done nothing wrong. I just wanted it to feel like home, she said one night, her voice cracking. I just wanted our daughter's first Christmas to be happy. And there, in that sterile hospital room, I made a silent vow. I would not let Karen Whitmore rewrite this story. Not for Emily. Not for our daughter. Not for anyone. At the same time across town, General Hayes was moving chess pieces. While Karen was busy holding tearful press conferences and leaking exclusive interviews to friendly reporters, the general and his team had been systematically gathering everything. Doorbell footage from our home. Security camera angles from 2 other houses. Eyewitness statements from 3 neighbors who'd seen the entire incident unfold. It turned out Karen wasn't nearly as beloved as she thought. Once people saw blood on the snow, once they heard that scream, they stopped being afraid. They started talking. Old complaints surfaced like corpses bobbing in a swamp. Stories about Karen bullying elderly neighbors into repainting their homes in freezing weather. Tales of her threatening to foreclose on families over fence colors. Accusations that she funneled HOA funds into personal improvement projects, like the extravagant garden she planted, without approval, behind her own home. Karen's empire was crumbling. And she knew it. By the afternoon she made her move. Instead of meeting the sheriff's deputies for her scheduled interview, Karen lawyered up hard. Her attorney, a slick guy with hair like a game show host, filed an emergency motion claiming unlawful harassment by military personnel, mental anguish, and loss of earning capacity due to public defamation. They demanded that all military personnel immediately vacate Willow Creek. They demanded that no criminal charges be filed until a full, independent civilian investigation could be conducted. They demanded $2.5 million in damages. It would have been funny if it weren't so vile. Hayes called me personally when the paperwork hit his desk. "Donovan," he said, "this woman's trying to turn herself into a victim. If she thinks she can bully the Army the way she bullied a homeowners association, she's got another thing coming." I paced the tiny hospital waiting area like a tiger in a too-small cage, fury burning in my chest. Before I could even respond, Hayes added, voice dangerously low. "County Sheriff just expedited charges. We're not waiting. Tonight, we serve her with formal assault charges. Official. Public. No escaping it." I stopped pacing. Finally. After all the pain, the lies, the posturing, Karen was going to face real consequences. And when it happened, when she realized there was no way out, the whole damn world was going to watch her fall. That night, under the yellow glow of the street lamps, Willow Creek Estates finally saw justice in action. The sheriff's cruiser pulled up to Karen Whitmore's pristine brick home like a wolf stalking its prey. Two deputies stepped out, one holding a clipboard, the other resting his hand casually on his belt, and approached the house without hesitation. Neighbors lined the sidewalks, some with phones recording, others whispering behind gloved hands. You could feel it in the air, the electric anticipation, the collective breath being held. And when Karen finally opened the door, wearing a silk robe and a scowl you could see from space, the entire street seemed to lean in closer. "Karen Whitmore?" the lead deputy asked, voice carrying over the winter breeze. She crossed her arms, the fake wrist wrap still in place. "I'm Karen Whitmore. And I demand you get off my property. You're trespassing." The deputy didn't flinch. "Ma'am, by order of the county sheriff's department, you are being formally charged with assault and battery against a pregnant woman, reckless endangerment, and harassment." You could almost hear the air leave the crowd. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish yanked from a tank. "You can't be serious," she sputtered. "This is harassment. This is an attack on the HOA. I was enforcing standards. I was." "You have the right to remain silent," the deputy said, already reading her Miranda rights as he moved closer. Karen backed up, hands raised like she thought sheer indignation would protect her. "I am the president of this community," she shrieked. "You can't do this to me. My husband will have your badge." But the second deputy stepped forward and snapped cold, professional handcuffs around her wrists. "You're under arrest, ma'am." The flash from someone's phone camera lit up the night. Karen's eyes darted wildly around the crowd, searching, pleading, but found no allies. Even her closest HOA cronies had their arms crossed, their faces stone cold. No one stepped forward. No one said a word in her defense. Not after what she did. Not after the videos, the testimonies, the blood on the snow. As the deputies led her toward the cruiser, Karen stumbled once, the heel of her designer boot catching on the curb. The entire crowd stiffened, holding back laughter or maybe just stunned by the sheer absurdity of it all. She tried one last time. Turning her head toward us, voice trembling with desperation. "You'll regret this," she shouted. "All of you. I built this neighborhood. You were nothing before me." Someone in the crowd, I couldn't tell who, muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "And now we're free because of you." The door slammed shut behind her. A heavy final sound. The cruiser pulled away, its taillights glowing red like twin eyes disappearing into the night. The crowd stood still for a long moment, stunned by the suddenness of it all. Then, slowly, like thawing after a long winter, people began to move, nodding to each other, offering smiles, tentative at first, then bigger, brighter. The general, standing tall near his Humvee, caught my eye across the street and gave a small, satisfied nod. It was over. Karen Whitmore, Queen of Control, had fallen. The HOA board called an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to strip her of her presidency. Karen quietly left the neighborhood. No HOA, no power, no control. She was a ghost now. A cautionary tale. And Willow Creek Estates? It bloomed. Without Karen, Willow Creek finally came alive. Front yards exploded in creativity, snowmen, reindeer, inflatable Santas waving joyfully in the wind. Emily came home stronger, and so did we. That Christmas we celebrated not just survival but freedom. A real home. A real community. Built not on fear, but on connection. If you believe justice should always win, and that every Karen deserves exactly what's coming to them, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible real-life HOA stories. Stay strong, stay proud, and may karma always find its way home.